It was supposed to be just another Friday night in Brookhaven, a night of music, laughter, and carefree celebration after finals week. But sometimes, the smallest moments carry the heaviest weight. A hug. A kiss on the cheek. A promise to text later. For 21-year-old Lila Moreno, that ordinary moment with her best friend became the last anyone would ever see of her. Think about this. How many times have you said goodbye to someone, assuming you'd see them again tomorrow? What if that casual farewell was the last memory you'd ever hold? Lila wasn't the kind of girl to disappear without a word. She was the kind who brought life into every room, bright smile, Polaroid camera always in hand, laughter that turned heads. That night, she went to a party like so many others had before her. She walked in surrounded by friends, but by morning, her car sat untouched, her phone had gone silent, and her family's world had cracked open. For the next 6 months, her face stared back from posters and television screens, as if demanding answers that never came. Parents clutched their daughters a little tighter. Students whispered about who she might have left with. A community that once felt safe began looking over its shoulder. This isn't just the story of a missing person. It's about how one night can change everything, for families, for friendships, for entire towns. It's about the thin line between the comfort of routine and the shock of the unknown. Stay with me, because in this story you'll not only follow the trail of a disappearance that haunted Brookhaven for years, but you'll also uncover lessons about trust, choices, and the fragility of the everyday moments we take for granted. And before we go deeper, let me ask you, if you had been at that party, watching Lila laugh, dance, and wave goodnight, would you have noticed something others missed? Lila Moreno grew up in Brookhaven, a town that people described as quiet, ordinary, the kind of place where doors were left unlocked and everyone knew whose kid was whose. Her parents, Rosa and Daniel, had lived there their whole lives. Rosa taught elementary school, while Daniel ran a small repair shop on the edge of town. They weren't wealthy, but their home was filled with warmth, tradition, and the kind of everyday comforts that built strong family ties. Lila was the eldest of 3 children, the one who carried both responsibility and freedom in equal measure. Her younger brother Mateo often joked that she was the third parent, because she always looked out for him. Her little sister, Sophia, saw her as a role model, borrowing clothes she wasn't supposed to and copying the way Lila styled her hair. At 21, Lila was already carving out her place in the world. She was studying communications at Brookhaven College, with dreams of becoming a photojournalist. Friends said she had an instinct for spotting beauty in unexpected places. Where others saw a cluttered street corner, she saw the way sunlight hit a cracked window. Where others noticed a party crowd, she noticed the expressions people wore when they thought no one was watching. Her Polaroid camera was always with her, not as a hobby but as an extension of who she was. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel. But like anyone her age, she carried struggles too. College wasn't easy financially. She worked part-time at a coffee shop downtown, balancing shifts with her studies. Some nights she came home exhausted, staying up late just to finish assignments. Friends remembered her as fiercely independent, but they also knew she sometimes felt weighed down by the pressure of being the responsible one in her family. Despite the long hours, she made space for joy. Her circle of friends was small but tight-knit, with Maya Delgado at the center of it. Maya wasn't just her best friend, she was her anchor. The two had been inseparable since middle school, bonded by sleepovers, secrets, and a mutual promise to always have each other's backs. They balanced one another, Lila, bold and outgoing, Maya, more reserved, thoughtful, the listener who noticed things others missed. The night of the party wasn't the first time Lila had talked about needing a break. Finals week had drained her, and she had told Maya earlier that day, "I just need one night where I don't think about exams, work, or anything. Just music and people and fun." It sounded innocent enough. She had no plans beyond visiting her parents for brunch the next morning. Looking back, her family struggled with the memory of small details that might have been warning signs. Rosa remembered Lila leaving the house that evening wearing her favorite floral blouse, smiling as she said, "Don't wait up, I'll be fine." Daniel recalled that she had mentioned feeling watched earlier that week while walking back from her shift, though she brushed it off with a laugh. To her friends, she seemed her usual self, energetic, easy to talk to, always ready with a joke. There were whispers later about whether she had recently started seeing someone new. Some friends claimed she'd been texting a guy they didn't know well. Others insisted it was exaggerated gossip. What stood out, however, was that she never mentioned him to Maya. That silence alone raised questions. Lila told Maya nearly everything, so why keep this secret? The party at Trevor's house was just one of many that spring, but for Lila it seemed like a release. She wanted to let loose, celebrate surviving another grueling semester, and take a break from the weight of responsibility. She wasn't reckless, but she wasn't cautious that night either. When Maya later replayed every detail, she remembered Lila saying, "We deserve this. Just one night to forget the stress." If there were red flags, they were subtle, the kind you only recognize in hindsight. The text about feeling watched. The vague stories about a new acquaintance. The way she brushed off her mother's concern with a smile that might have been covering something deeper. By the time Lila and Maya walked up the steps of Trevor's house at 10:30 p.m., none of it seemed to matter. The porch light glowed, the bass of the music thumped through the walls, and the air buzzed with the anticipation of summer freedom. To everyone there, it was just another college party. For Lila, it would be the last ordinary night of her life. The morning after the party, Brookhaven woke up like any other Saturday. Maya, however, felt a knot in her stomach. She had fallen asleep expecting a text from Lila, the kind of short message they always exchanged after nights out, "Made it home," or "Call you tomorrow." Instead, her phone was blank. By late morning, she was restless. She called Lila's phone several times. No answer. At first, Maya reasoned it away, maybe Lila had stayed over at the party house, maybe her phone had died. But when the afternoon sun crept past her window and still no word, worry settled into panic. By 3 p.m., Maya drove back to Trevor's house, hoping to find her best friend laughing in the kitchen or crashed on the couch. Instead, she found silence. The house was empty, the chaos of the night before reduced to beer cans and sticky floors. Lila's car was still parked outside, untouched. That was the moment Maya knew something was wrong. She contacted Lila's parents, who hadn't heard from her since the previous evening. Hours later, with fear escalating, Rosa and Daniel went to the Brookhaven Police Department to file a missing person report. At first, authorities hesitated. College students sometimes disappeared for a night or two, swept up in spontaneous road trips or afterparties. But Lila didn't fit that profile. She was close with her family, had a brunch scheduled with her mother, and her car sat abandoned. Detectives realized this wasn't a case of a young adult simply blowing off plans. Investigators began piecing together her last known movements. She was seen alive at 1:15 a.m., hugging Maya at the door and sending her off. Her final phone activity came minutes later, a text at 1:28 a.m. to a classmate that read, "Hey, where are you guys?" The phone pinged off a nearby tower at 1:32 a.m., less than a mile from the party. After that, silence. Witnesses offered conflicting accounts. Some swore they saw her leave the house alone. Others claimed she was speaking with a tall man in a baseball cap, someone not widely recognized by the regular party crowd. A neighbor reported hearing a car door slam and an engine start around the same time, though they couldn't provide a description. The man in the baseball cap quickly became the focus of attention. Police circulated his vague description: tall, broad-shouldered, late 20s. No one came forward to identify him. Trevor, the party host, insisted he didn't know the man personally, claiming friends of friends often brought outsiders to his gatherings. Naturally, attention also turned to Trevor himself. Hosting a party that large meant dozens of potential witnesses, but it also made him a convenient suspect. Detectives interviewed him multiple times, pressing about his whereabouts after 1:30 a.m. He maintained he had stayed inside, cleaning up and watching over guests who were still drinking in the kitchen. Several classmates confirmed seeing him there, though not continuously. Maya was also questioned repeatedly, not because detectives suspected her, but because she was the last known person to see Lila alive. She recounted their final hug so many times it became etched into her memory. "She told me to text when I got home safe," Maya said during her interview. "I never imagined that would be the last thing she'd say to me." Investigators processed Lila's car, which still sat where she had parked it. Inside, they found her purse, camera bag, and a sweater folded neatly on the passenger seat. There were no signs of forced entry or a struggle. Her phone, however, was gone. The backyard of Trevor's house was searched thoroughly. Beer cans, cigarette butts, and discarded cups filled trash bags, but nothing directly linked to Lila's disappearance. Detectives requested access to nearby surveillance cameras, gas stations, convenience stores, traffic lights. One grainy clip from a corner store camera showed a figure resembling Lila walking past around 1:35 a.m., but the footage was too blurry to confirm. Word of Lila's disappearance spread quickly. By Sunday morning, her face was on flyers taped to shop windows and telephone poles. Volunteers, classmates, neighbors, even strangers, joined in search parties. They combed wooded trails, riverbanks, and abandoned buildings, calling her name until their voices cracked. Local news stations covered the story within days. Reporters stood outside the Moreno home, describing the growing mystery. National outlets soon followed, turning Brookhaven into a town under a microscope. To the public, it felt like a haunting riddle. How could a young woman vanish in a crowded house without anyone truly noticing? Social media amplified the frenzy. Hashtags with Lila's name trended regionally. Tips poured in from across the state, most of them dead ends. Rumors swirled, sightings in nearby towns, theories that she'd been kidnapped by a stranger, speculation that someone in her own circle was hiding the truth. Detectives faced mounting pressure. Parents wanted answers. Students whispered in hallways, some pointing fingers at Trevor, others at the mysterious man in the baseball cap. Every inconsistency in witness statements was treated as potential deception. Police called several partygoers back for interrogation. One young woman admitted she saw Lila near the porch, speaking animatedly with the man in the cap. She didn't look scared, she told investigators. It was like casual flirting. But then again, maybe I misread it. Another witness claimed he saw the man place a hand on her shoulder as they stepped toward the driveway. Yet another insisted Lila walked out alone, adjusting her blouse as she headed down the street. The contradictions painted a confusing picture. With no surveillance clearly identifying her after 1:35 a.m., no physical evidence in the car, and no phone activity, the case stalled quickly. At a press conference 2 weeks later, Rosa and Daniel Moreno stood before cameras. Rosa clutched her daughter's Polaroid camera in her hands. "Lila is not just a face on a flyer," she said, voice breaking. "She is our daughter, our sister, our friend. We will not stop looking until we bring her home." Their words struck a chord. Donations funded more search efforts. Candlelight vigils were held downtown. Yet despite the attention, the investigation hit wall after wall. For detectives, the early stages of the investigation offered more questions than answers. Who was the man in the baseball cap? Why did Lila's phone go silent so abruptly? Did someone at the party know more than they were admitting? The town's sense of safety cracked. Parents warned their children not to walk home alone at night. Students avoided large parties, uneasy with the thought that one of their own could vanish without a trace. And as weeks turned into months, Brookhaven's unanswered questions only deepened. Months passed with no sign of Lila. Her case hovered in limbo, active but stagnant, until an unexpected lead shifted the investigation. 6 months after her disappearance, a hiker stumbled on a torn piece of floral fabric deep in the woods 3 miles from Trevor's house. When detectives compared it to the blouse Lila had been wearing, it was a match. Cadaver dogs were brought in, but no body was found. Still, the discovery reignited pressure on police. Soon after, an anonymous tip landed on the department's hotline. The caller claimed the man in the baseball cap was a local drifter named Kyle Denton, a 27-year-old with a history of petty theft and disorderly conduct. He wasn't a student but was known to crash campus parties. Detectives pulled his record and quickly realized he had been in the area the night of Lila's disappearance. Kyle was picked up for questioning. At first, he denied knowing Lila at all. But as police pressed harder, inconsistencies emerged. Witnesses placed him near the porch with her. Cell phone records showed his device pinging the same tower as hers within minutes of her final message. When investigators searched his car, they found strands of long brown hair wedged under the passenger seat. Lab results suggested a match to Lila. On a cool October morning, 6 officers arrived at a rundown apartment complex and arrested Kyle Denton on suspicion of kidnapping and murder. News cameras captured his handcuffed walk to the patrol car, his head down, baseball cap still pulled low. The arrest gave Brookhaven the headline it had been waiting for: suspect identified in disappearance of Lila Moreno. The charges included first-degree murder, unlawful restraint, and evidence tampering. Prosecutors argued that even without a body, the circumstantial evidence, hair in the car, inconsistent alibis, and multiple witness accounts, was strong enough to pursue trial. The prosecution painted Kyle as a predator who exploited college parties to prey on vulnerable women. In court documents, they described him as manipulative, opportunistic, and dangerous. They emphasized the timeline: Lila leaves the party, Kyle is seen with her, her phone goes silent near his known route home, and her clothing is later discovered in the woods. Their case leaned heavily on forensic science. Hair samples. Traces of soil from Kyle's car that matched the wooded area. Phone records placing him in the vicinity. Though no body had been found, the state argued that the evidence formed a damning mosaic pointing to guilt. Drop a quick note in the comments letting us know where you're watching from. It's always incredible to see how far these stories reach around the world. The defense pushed back hard. Kyle's attorney argued the case was built on circumstantial threads, not proof. They questioned the reliability of eyewitnesses, pointing out the chaos of a crowded party with alcohol involved. Memory, they argued, was fragile and prone to distortion. They also attacked the forensic evidence. Hair could have been transferred innocently. Soil samples, they claimed, were not exclusive to the woods where the blouse was found but common throughout Brookhaven. As for phone records, thousands of people passed through the same tower radius every day. Most importantly, the defense hammered on the absence of a body. No body, no murder, the attorney declared during a press conference, sparking heated debate in the media. Brookhaven split into 2 camps. Many believed Kyle Denton was guilty, convinced the case had finally reached its turning point. Candlelight vigils turned into rallies demanding justice. Others, however, began doubting. Was this a genuine breakthrough or a rush to close the case? The "no body, no murder" refrain gained traction, fueled by defense-friendly commentators on talk shows and blogs. National media pounced on the drama. Headlines branded Kyle as either a monster hiding in plain sight or a scapegoat caught in a flawed investigation. Every court date drew crowds of reporters. Every motion filed by the defense was dissected on primetime TV. The trial preparation brought its own shocks. First, a classmate of Lila's came forward claiming she had seen Lila arguing with someone else outside the party. Someone she believed was Trevor, the host. She described raised voices, though she admitted she couldn't hear the words. This testimony muddied the waters, reopening suspicion on Trevor. Second, leaked police notes revealed that during Kyle's initial interrogation, he mentioned seeing Lila walk off with some other guy, but later retracted the statement. The defense seized on this, accusing detectives of coercion and cherry-picking evidence. Then came the most explosive revelation: DNA from the blouse fragment was too degraded to confirm definitively that it belonged to Lila. Prosecutors could only argue probability, not certainty. The defense leapt on the weakness, insisting the entire case was speculative. When Kyle finally appeared in court for the preliminary hearings, the atmosphere was electric. Rosa and Daniel Moreno sat silently in the front row, Rosa gripping the same Polaroid camera she had carried since the press conference months before. Maya, her eyes tired and red, testified about their last goodbye. Her words shook the courtroom. She kissed me on the cheek and told me to text when I got home. That was the last time I saw her. The judge allowed the case to move forward to trial despite the defense's objections. While the evidence is circumstantial, the state has presented enough to warrant a jury's consideration, the judge ruled. Outside the courthouse, protesters gathered with signs, some demanding Kyle's conviction, others warning against wrongful imprisonment. The tension mirrored the town's growing divide. As the legal battle dragged on, false leads piled up. Social media fueled speculation that Lila had been seen alive in another state. Police chased tips about unidentified remains in neighboring counties, each turning into disappointment. One particularly damaging rumor claimed Maya herself had been involved, that jealousy had sparked an argument leading to tragedy. The baseless theories spread online, leaving Maya devastated. "I lost my best friend, and now people think I hurt her," she said tearfully in an interview. Through it all, the Morenos endured. They attended every hearing, sat through every headline, clung to hope that the truth, whatever it was, would finally come out. By the time the trial began, Brookhaven was a town on edge. For some, the courtroom represented closure. For others, it was the beginning of more questions. The prosecution promised a compelling narrative tying every thread together. The defense promised to dismantle it, piece by piece. And for the Moreno family, it wasn't just about a verdict, it was about bringing Lila home, even if only through the truth. The trial of Kyle Denton began nearly 2 years after the night Lila Moreno vanished. By then, the case had transformed from a local tragedy into a national spectacle. Reporters filled every seat in the gallery, and cameras lined the courthouse steps. For Brookhaven, it was no longer just about finding justice. It was about proving whether the story they had been told all along was the truth. The prosecution set the tone early. Standing before the jury, the lead prosecutor declared, "This case is about a young woman who trusted the wrong person for one fleeting moment. And that moment cost her everything." They promised the jury a timeline that, piece by piece, would show Kyle Denton as the last person to be with Lila. The defense countered with equal force. "This case is built on shadows and assumptions," Kyle's attorney said. "No body. No weapon. No proof beyond speculation. The state wants you to fill in the blanks with fear, not facts." The line stuck. Every article, every talk show repeated it. No body, no murder. Maya Delgado was the prosecution's star witness. On the stand, she recounted the last time she saw her best friend, the hug, the kiss on the cheek, the promise to text. Her voice cracked as she described waking up without that text the next morning. The courtroom fell silent, many jurors visibly moved. Other partygoers testified as well, though their stories conflicted. One insisted he saw Lila leave with Kyle. Another said she walked out alone. A third claimed she was arguing with Trevor, the party host. The inconsistency gave the defense ammunition, highlighting just how unreliable memory could be after a night of drinking. A forensic analyst presented evidence of hair strands found in Kyle's car. "The DNA is consistent with Lila Moreno," she testified. But under cross-examination, the defense forced her to admit that hair analysis is not as conclusive as fingerprints or modern DNA testing. "It could be hers, or it could be someone with similar markers," the attorney pressed. The jury scribbled notes. The most dramatic moment came midway through the trial. Prosecutors revealed soil samples taken from Kyle's car trunk. Experts testified that the soil matched the wooded area where the torn blouse was discovered. The courtroom buzzed with tension. The defense fired back, calling their own expert, who argued the soil was common throughout the county and not unique to that patch of woods. "If this is your smoking gun," the defense attorney sneered, "it's nothing more than dust." The blow landed hard. Commentators later described it as the turning point when the state's narrative began to wobble. At one point, the prosecution called Trevor to the stand. Rumors had long swirled about his involvement, and the defense seized the chance to cast suspicion his way. When asked if he had argued with Lila that night, Trevor's face flushed. "No," he said firmly. But the defense introduced testimony from a classmate who swore she had heard raised voices. The contradiction stirred doubt among jurors and reignited public suspicion. Kyle himself eventually took the stand, a risky move. He denied harming Lila, insisting he left the party early and never saw her again. "I didn't know her," he said. "I wasn't with her." Under cross-examination, however, prosecutors pressed him on the hair in his car and the phone records placing him near her. His responses wavered. I don't know. Maybe someone else was in my car," he stammered. His credibility suffered. The prosecution pleaded with the jury to see the bigger picture. "Every thread leads back to him," the prosecutor argued. "Every witness, every piece of evidence points to Kyle Denton as the last person with Lila Moreno. Don't let him escape justice because her body hasn't been found. Her silence is evidence enough." The defense countered with precision. "The state has given you coincidences, not proof. You cannot convict a man on guesswork. Our system demands certainty. And certainty is what they cannot give you." The jury listened intently, their faces unreadable. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Rosa and Daniel sat holding hands in the front row, their faces pale. Maya clutched a small folded note Lila had once written her, a private token of strength. The foreperson stood and read. "On the charge of first-degree murder, we find the defendant not guilty." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Rosa collapsed into Daniel's arms. Maya buried her face in her hands, sobbing quietly. The jury explained later that the lack of a body and conflicting testimony had created too much reasonable doubt. "We weren't convinced beyond a reasonable doubt," one juror told reporters. Kyle Denton was acquitted of murder but remained convicted on a lesser charge of evidence tampering, tied to the blouse fragment and forensic inconsistencies. He received a 5-year sentence, far less than the life term many had expected. The verdict split Brookhaven. Supporters of the Moreno family called it a failure of justice, arguing the system had let a guilty man walk free. Others said it was the right outcome, a reminder that justice requires proof, not emotion. Outside the courthouse, chants echoed from both sides. Some shouted, "Justice for Lila." Others countered with, "Innocent until proven guilty." For Rosa and Daniel, the acquittal was a crushing blow. Rosa later told a reporter, "We wanted answers. Instead, we got excuses." Daniel kept silent, but his grief showed in the way he clutched Lila's Polaroid camera, refusing to let it go. As for Kyle, he left the courthouse flanked by his lawyer, silent under a barrage of cameras and questions. His expression was unreadable, but his future forever marked by the case that turned him into a public figure of suspicion. Maya continued to carry the weight of that final goodbye. In interviews, she said, "I don't know what's worse, that he was acquitted, or that we may never know the truth. Every day I hear her voice, telling me to text when I got home. And I never got to reply." The trial ended, but closure never came. For Brookhaven, the verdict cemented the case as one of those stories that would never truly fade. Parents still warned their children about late-night parties. Strangers still whispered about the man in the baseball cap. And the empty chair at the Moreno family table remained, year after year. Thank you for staying with us through the story of Lila Moreno, a young woman whose final goodbye still echoes in the hearts of her family, friends, and the entire town of Brookhaven. Stories like these are never easy to tell, but they remind us of how precious every moment is and how quickly life can change. If this case gripped you the way it has gripped so many others, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Do you think justice was served? Or do you believe the truth still lies hidden somewhere out there? Share your perspective in the comments, I'll be reading them closely. And if you found this story powerful, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who follow true crime stories. Your support not only helps this channel grow but also ensures more stories like this one continue to be told. Before you go, drop a quick note in the comments letting us know where you're watching from. It's always incredible to see how far these stories reach around the world. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and remember, every goodbye matters.